Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 530 of Constructive Criticism. Abe, you're here. You're about this. Did you know it's been 30 episodes since 500?
I mean, logically, yes, I did know that because we're on episode 530. But I don't know. Time's a flat circle. Every episode happens. You know, the show is a continuous thing. I can't really think about it. How many episodes I've done? I just do it.
Honestly, it's so weird, right? Because in my head, I know that I did the show with John and Seth for a year. That's only what, probably 50 episodes. I'm sure we skipped 2 weeks for holidays or different stuff. And not everybody was on every episode. I was, but I think about you specifically, and I remember I went through the archives to find out where you landed because I was like, it might be number 3 now, and you weren't quite there. Do you remember this?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think, I think, I think you will be next year. I think you will be next year if you brace me with your presence, though.
No, number three.
Yeah,
We'll have one, two, and three on the show.
yeah, yeah. It's so funny, right? Because you still feel like the new guy, right? But you've probably done 100 more episodes than multiple co-hosts. Speaking of the new guy on the block, we got some new guys on the block in Modern. That is our main topic today. Before we do that, oh my gosh, I cannot believe we only got one comment about this, and it could be because I got ahead of it and posted it before the episode went up on Twitter. But hey, Abe, did you know that Mason and I really, really messed up what the new RCQ formats were moving forward?
I did hear about that. I did notice that.
Okay, so just to be clear, to clear this up, next season is in fact standard, then modern, then standard, then standard. I mean, Mason's not here. I can just throw him under the bus that he's the one that directed this. But also, I don't know, it's hard, man. I wish that there was just a single place where you could see this, and it's not even on the even the Star City website. It's not clear. Like, why can't we just have a website that just says current RC? We used to have this, right? Am I not crazy?
I think there is I think because it's third party to Star City, it's on Star City to set the dates and everything, and Star City's kind of slow about rolling it out. And
Okay.
I think there is a calendar still on the Wizards website. Don't don't quote me on that, but I believe it's still out there.
Well, that's it. I just wanted to apologize. People were like, "Hey, I think you guys are wrong about this," and I was like, "Yep, we know. We knew before we posted the episode, but the editor had already edited it, and I don't know. I thought the information and our thoughts on it were valid. I really do wish that we did modern, standard, pioneer. I actually think that would be better. So I wanted to leave it in the episode, but we messed up. We're sorry. We're humans. We make mistakes. So there are quite a few things to talk about when it comes to modern right now. And I think that Abe and we are not aligned on modern right now, which is fun. If you watch the pre-show, you get to hear us kind of not talk about it, but poke at each other to be like, oh, what do you think? Which you can do at patreon.com/acmpg. Win rates, I typically use a site called mtg.dex or dex.net. And I think it was 3 episodes ago, Mason was like, hey, what happened? They're cutting a lot of the data. They used to have way more. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if it's that we only get the top 32 data from MTGO now. I don't know if it's something else. And Abe, you specifically mentioned how, when looking at this week's data from a modern metagame on Twitter, that it looks like they're definitely using at least melee data, if not more. And I'm interested, I use the data as a reference point, as a what a kind of a starting point, right? I think about it, we don't do tier lists very often in Magic compared to other fighting games, Like, there's a lot of games that use tier lists to kind of break down and give you a starting point for, like, here's the tier. And in Magic, what we do is we look at metagame percentage pretty often. And I think metagame percentage is, like, nonsensical. I think it gives you close to no information. But I'm kind of curious. You said something during the pre-show about how you don't like melee data.
I don't. I really don't. I see it. I think that's really interesting. I think it makes sense why you like why the number of like I do think it's good to have a higher volume of matches. In general, that will always make your data better. I think that when it comes to data, I don't necessarily consider the melee data very informative or clean for a few reasons. I think that one, the melee data includes many events at which people's incentives are not well aligned with the incentives of the people who are trying to read the metagame percentages of the data. And there's a lot of noise that also comes from things like people just not titling their decks correctly. I don't know if you recall, like, Nick Miller talking about how he had to go through all the submitted RC decks and then make sure to align with somewhat of a macro archetype before they could even post the like metagame breakdown for the RC that just happened a few weeks ago. But that's like a very common thing. People just love to mess with that. So if you're just scraping based on name, which I imagine a lot of these things do, and they're not going to go in and look at it, you're not going to necessarily get clean, informative data. There's going to be a lot of data points you shouldn't have, and also like Melee having events that are like, you know, such and such Monday Night
Online.
Right, yeah, like Tuesday online, whatever, spell table, you know, like webcam, or like even just random LGS weeklies, I don't think necessarily presents the best data that I want to be looking at in terms of quality. And I think that compared to you, I value metagame share a lot higher than you do, because I care a lot about knowing what it is people are defaulting to playing. What it is people like.
Hold on. I misspoke here. I think that MTGO metagame share is not.
I still think that's incorrect.
Oh,
or at least that's not incorrect. I think I don't agree with that. I think MTGO metagame share reflects, especially in formats like Modern, where there's like a lot of people like to play it, and also people have their one deck and want to keep playing it. Like, I think that Modern is probably where it matters the most.
Let's talk about the data really quick, because I think I have multiple points that show why I think what I think. So there is you said something earlier. You have Boros energy, right? You have the last week of data, and it's substantially more matches than the ones that I usually use, that the MTG.net. It's interesting though, because you said that, you know, you want to erase the chaff, right? But if that's true, then wouldn't Boros's energy go up against chaff, against the randos, against the weird stuff, if it's really that good of a deck? And that's not what happened.
Well, I think there's other things that explain why it is that Boros has like declined in win percentage over the last few weeks.
Plummet.
I think there's a lot that supports that, called there are other decks in the format. So I think rather than attributing that to like I don't think that having Boros play against a bunch of random things explains why Boros is good. I think the data we're going to talk about supports that, and I would love to get in that conversation.
Well, let's talk about the format. Like, what do you think? You know, we have the data; it'll be available in the show notes. Like, what do you think the format's about right now? Because you feel like not much has changed, and I feel like, you know, there's one thing that hasn't changed, but there is a lot of things that have.
I mean, here's the way I see the trajectory of the format over the last few months. From Nadu, out of Nadu, we had Boros Energy rise to be the de facto best deck, and it has continued to do so. We have the One Ring being the absolute best card in the format that defines a lot of of the best decks in the format. I think that being the best One Ring deck or being the best deck and answering the One Ring and beating the One Ring is currently what we're seeing play out in the format, which is very consistent with what I felt, where I felt the format was headed when we talked about it last. And I think that those rules of the format of like you need to have a plan for beating Boros, and Boros is the most played and a very high win rate deck that also, you know, is finding ways to combat the One Ring or is playing the One Ring itself. Like beating the One Ring and beating Boros are really important. The pressure that's put on the format by Boros to be interacting or to be deploying threats or doing things as quickly as turn one are very real. And I think that, you know, beating a card that when cast on turn 4 proceeds to take over the game quite easily, that is the other constraint. You have plans for the One Ring or else. And I think that like those two things really do define the rules of engagement of the format. And because of that, now we're seeing what has really changed and the developments really come in the last few months is that the format is becoming really combo heavy. You know, I think that looking at the decks that have like had their weekends or are like popping up, there's like everything beyond Boros, Dimir Murktide.
You just say energy because I don't.
Sure. I'm going to specifically talk about it as Boros because I know we're going to talk about Mardu a bit here.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
But I do want to start just by talking about Boros. I think that Boros, Dimir Murktide, and what is it? The Eldrazi ramp deck are like the decks that I know we talk about as being like, okay, this is proactive and somewhat fair. It's kind of doing its thing. Has a kind of mid-rangey game plan.
Good.
And those decks were de facto best coming out of the bans, and I think everything else surrounding it is basically a combo deck, or is literally a combo deck, and that is the rest of the format, because those are the things that are very good at attacking the constraints of you need to be able to beat Boros assembling kind of a cheap aggro clock of the snowballing 1-drops and 2-drops, and you need to beat the One Ring. And people being able to like have somewhat of an inevitability stage of drawing way more cards than you do. So because of those things, I think that combo's really taken off, and I think that all of the rest of the things we see in the other half of the format that's an interactive suite are like One Ring decks, or are the Boros shell. Those are adapting and are succeeding because they're adapting to that pressure of the rest of the metagame becoming this more combo-y field than it used to be. And that's where I start out from when I say that I don't think much has changed, but I think a lot of things around that top tier have changed.
Yeah, I think the last that I remember checking in on Modern, I feel like we were pretty high on Tron decks. And these Eldrazi ramp decks have outperformed through the Breach decks and the Tron decks by a pretty substantial margin. Like, I don't know if the data for win percentages support that because of the number of players, but like the metagame share, like people are, and also it's, you know, a deck that now I've played a few times, and I can kind of see why it's happening. It's doing like the most powerful things, and honestly, like if you're like an amulet type of player, right, and like you like big mana decks, or a Tron player and you like big mana decks, it's just a really easy deck to go into. It doesn't have the thing that it's doing differently than I think I talked about Amulet Titan and Mason talked about Through the Breach during that episode. The thing that it's doing differently is it's kind of like an all-in ramp deck in a lot of ways. Not very much like a control deck, like the decks that I like, or a combo-esque deck like Amulet Titan. It is like, hey, we're just gonna ramp, and then the game, like, in some ways it is combo-esque, to your point. And I wonder, if the fact that it has a good Boros energy matchup is the reason that it has kind of taken that slot of big mana. On the flip side, you talked about combo. Do you think Grinding Station is a combo deck, or do you think that it's a good cards deck that has a combo?
Does that distinction matter?
Yes, I think it does. I think that, like, if you only want to play it as a combo deck, you could probably achieve it. Like, the card quality is good enough. That probably works out. However, I think that the edges it gains and the reason that it's cracking, it's like maybe the best deck in the format over something like Boros or Mark, is because it also just is a good deck, like just has good cards. Like it gets to be the Jundish style deck as well.
I mean, I think if you look at the rules of engagement that I kind of set out roughly of,
Yeah.
you have to have a plan to beat the advantage accrued by the One Ring, and you have to be able to play a game that hangs with the early game of Boros. By nature of what you're saying of it playing a bunch of good cards, I think it's like pretty close in, maybe not an actual structure, but it feels, it's an Emery, Tameo, Saga, Mox Amber, like pile of really good cards, all of which play towards actually an end game of comboing to win. It's also a One Ring deck itself. And if anything, it's probably the best at leveraging the good cards in it because of things like Emery.
I do.
And has the cheapest repeated card advantage engines. Like, I think all of that, like, to me, it's just a combo control deck, right? I think it is a cut above some of the other combo decks in that it's not all in on having to be a combo deck in the way that Belcher would be. By having a diversity of game plan, that just makes it really good. But I do consider it to be a combo deck because that is how it's angled to be.
I do think that Tameo leads it more down that road than things like the Monkey did. Like, I do think that is true. My thoughts about this format that are a little bit different is because Zoo is just so different than the rest of the format and is doing so well. I don't know if it found a hole in the metagame. I don't know if it, like, I don't know. Is that a combo deck to you? This, like, synergy-based, hyper-aggressive, like, kill you in 2 turns type of deck? Is that...
I mean, if you want to call it combo aggro, it does have, like, its, like, Leyline Scion draws. But no, I mean, like...
We're drawing a weird thin line here.
Like, I mean, really, I think the format lynches so much around Boros being as good as it is, because I think that one of the draws to playing a deck like Domain Zoo is that you have a bunch of threats that are all really good against the removal in Boros. The times that are bad are where you get like Blood Moon or Harbinger, but you have draws play around that. You have a ton of removal and bigger threats that answer those things. You have Stubborn Denials and Consign to Memories in your sideboard to fight over the One Ring. It's like, you have all of the tools in a deck like Domain Zoo to fight over the things that currently matter in the format. And for that reason, the deck hangs. And in fact, it gets to be an aggro deck that beats out the removal options of the energy shells because the damage-based removal either can't target it because you have a Leyline, you have a Scion, or your stuff is just bigger at base, like with Virtual Kabu. Right, like I think both of those kind of lend to that, and they're good at playing a game that closes, or at least tries to close before the One Ring can take over, or prevents the One Ring from taking over by, lining up or Stubborn Denial or having that Bowmaster or whatever it is. I think that no deck that is doing well kind of surprises me when I think of the format in that way. But I think that the way that the format's moving forward, like, I don't know, it's hard to say what the next thing will will be, but I think the presence of Domain Zoo kind of, at least to me, is a bit.
That's the one that surprises me. Like Domain Zoo, like
I think it is the outlier for sure,
like,
and that's why I think that like looking ahead at Modern, I don't want to get too far ahead of this, but like looking ahead at Modern, I know there's like looking over the challenge results. There's like Aspiring Spike had a Domain aggro deck that's somewhat like kind of a resilient aggro deck where a lot of the threats line up really well against the removal. It's kind of like a Traverse Delirium deck with the 1 mana Team Battle Rage from Duskmourn. But you know, like just kind of this really condensed aggro plan, being able to kill really quickly or slog it out, in addition to like having some amount of interaction and pressure. Like there is I think room for the other side of the way that Boros and the One Ring have been attacked to be explored. It doesn't have to all be okay. I will combo you to get around the fact that you're playing good interactive spells and you have like a quick game plan. It's like I can hang in the early game with you on creature quality, and that's what I think Domain Zoo excels and is probably currently most explored, best in class. But otherwise, like everything else is combo.
It's funny. We'll get into what we would play, but the last time the format was like this was not that long before Lord of the Rings. Like, and at that time, people were just like, all right, I'm just going to play like really good blue cards and really good red cards at that time. But like, I don't think there's anything stopping people from like being like, okay, like if the format's about this, like you want to One Ring battle me, like I'm going to have expressive iteration in my deck. Like you want to One Ring battle me, I'm going to have like Brazen Borrower in my deck. Like there's so much that could happen in that access that also from like the blue side, right? That could also attack the combo side. Like be like you know, I mean, there's so many good cards against blue. It's crazy in Modern. What's interesting is like, do you want red? Do you want Thoughtseize? Do you want? I mean, honestly, like white cards have pretty good too. Like, I don't know what the answer is, but like last time we got to this point, some random blue mid-range deck, mid-range control. I don't know how to explain these. Ended up being pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that like right now, if you look at the like, I mean the what I consider like the two most fair decks you can play, right? There's kind of like there's Dimir Frog, and there's
I don't think that's the answer
Mardu.
Here, for what it's worth. Like,
well, I'm saying if you look at them,
okay,
you look at those decks, Dimir Frog and Boros/Mardu Energy. Now I'll combine them a bit because this is where the distinction I think becomes important. If you look at the last like 30 to 60 days, Mardu has started to perform better than Boros. People are still, I think, sticking to Boros a lot because they like Blood Moon, which is the biggest difference. For people not familiar with those two archetypes, the distinction here is really that the Boros deck gets to play more basics, have a bit cleaner of mana base, and also gets to play Blood Moon in it. And the Mardu deck gets to play Thoughtseize, Orcish Bowmasters, but does not get to play Blood Moon and is weaker to Blood Moon and Harbinger of the Tides. So if you look at the win rates of the archetypes respectively, Boros has a hard time with the really good combo decks, but has a really easy time with decks like Dimir and
it crushes Dimir. Just absolutely,
yes,
yeah, blows it out of the water.
Yeah, it's like at least a literal 60-40, which does not happen often among two very, very strong decks. But if you look at the decks where having counter magic really matters, you know, the combo decks of the format, Boros struggles. Blood Moon helps a lot in the Eldrazi matchups, and it helps in the...
It has to help in Belcher. I haven't played the matchup, but I have to assume the Belcher can't beat a Blood Moon.
I think it probably can. It has a lot of counter magic and a lot of ways to fight over it.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, it doesn't need blue to combo off. Like, it can just raw draw Belcher It'll just be worse.
No, that's true.
But it has like you have force negation, you have disrupting shoal.
That's true. No, you're right.
You have counterspell. Like the blue Belcher deck has a lot of counter magic to fight over these things, but is not really good at dealing with a ton of counter magic. Overall, like the Boros deck, right? It gets that Blood Moon, so it kind of contains a portion of the format, but it doesn't have ways to deal with a lot of the other things. It doesn't have a lot of great answers to combo decks that don't care about getting Blood Moon. Whereas Mardu gets access to Bowmasters, which is pretty good against the One Ring decks, and also like reasonable against combo decks that are looking to dig to things, although it's really just better in the mirrors by having a main board card that hates against the One Ring, and also is just a good like 2 for 1 removal spell, and has Thoughtseize and other discard, which is very good against the combo decks that Boros traditionally struggles with. Whereas if you look at Dimir, it struggles in all of the mid-range matchups that Boros is very good in, has the edge, but is substantially better against the combo decks. So, like, currently, there's, right, if you take Mardu out of the picture, there's this great dichotomy of if you want to play fair, you either are doing this and taking your losses to the combo decks and playing Boros, or you're taking losses to the other mid-range players and you're trying to farm the field of combo decks, right? And Mardu, I think, kind of exists in the middle by sacrificing a little bit of specifically like the Harbinger of the Tides and Blood Moon matchups that like you can trade off. It's really a triangle. You can kind of trade off either being a little bit better
for this specific archetype, right? Like this mid-rangey control.
Yes, if you're looking to play fair, it is a bit of a triangle.
Thank you.
You can choose between playing like Frog and losing to the other mid-range matchups and being good against combo decks. You can choose to play Boros and be really good against the mid-range decks and good against big mana. Deck for Blood Moon is good, and you can like lose to all the decks where Blood Moon isn't good and also be a little worse against Mardu. Or you can play Mardu and be a little bit better in the mirror, a little bit worse against Frog, but still pretty good. And also, better against the combo decks, but kind of like in the middle. And right now, that's why I think it's really important to look at the trends of the data and where that is. Like right now, Mardu is winning more than Boros is. And I think that is really because the format is becoming more and more about, like, people have found an angle of attack that leans on Boros's weaknesses. It cannot cover that many combo decks. It can only play so many answers, and the answers are pretty limited in what white-red can do as far as answering combo. And for those reasons, the format has adjusted to put this lean on the best deck. But I think that
Magic is sweet, dude.
As things move forward,
the last 50 words you said were really cool. Like the color dynamics of Magic, introducing like what's possible in a format like Modern. That's cool. Like I don't know.
Yeah. And I think it's really just the reality of the fair decks, and especially because fair decks are really what people gravitate towards the most in Modern. They don't feel specialized. You can pick them up and put them down. You always get to play a really consistent game. It feels more like Magic. If you're not someone who likes playing combo decks, you have a wealth of options. They're, I think, 3 of the best decks in the format. But, the rest of the format is taking notice, and we're starting to see that. The weaknesses of Boros, I think, define every deck you look. If you open up Goldfish right now hopefully it's this way by the time the episode goes live, but if you look at Goldfish today, and I'm looking at it right now, the top 3 represented archetypes are Boros Energy, Dimir Murktide, Domain Zoo. And then Mardu Energy's in 5th. But we've got the rest of it: Domain Zoo, Ruby Storm, Jeskai Control, Eldrazi Ramp, Amulet Titan, Goryo's, Blue Belcher. And even beyond that, the next 4 decks are all various combo decks. Like, there is a pattern to this. All of the combo decks have a reason to exist in the format, and it's because they are good at preying on Boros's weakness.
So what would you play?
Personally, now, I would play Mardu, because I think that Blood Moon is only so valuable. I think that people are moving away from the decks that Blood Moon is naturally good against. And I think that the existence of frog players who have harbingers, and I mean even like Belcher I think has some number of harbingers, but I get to play the best threats. I still get to have that access to the best threats. I get a bit of an edge against Boros, which is by far the most represented deck. And I'm not losing too much by doing that, and I get to have access to really broad tools like Thoughtseize. And right now, I think as the format kind of leans towards that, that's going to be really good. Now, there's a lot that could happen in the coming weeks and months as we head out of this season and into the RC. Especially, I'll be very interested to see how the format getting true pressure put on it as RC season comes up at the beginning of next year, with a lot more time to develop, and how people try to find other weaknesses in those top decks, and how the Boros cards adapt and everything like that. But as you're closing out the season for your RSQ season these last couple weeks, listening to this episode, if you're playing Boros, I think you'll be really happy if you audible to Mardu. And that, given that your metagame locally is related to what the Moto metagame looks like, I think that as you look into future, weeks, months of SCGs or, online events or whatever, keep in mind that combo decks are really the only thing that aren't energy and aren't Murktide. It's combo decks, and even I consider like Eldrazi Ramp and Eldrazi Tron combo decks in that too. And people are adapting to Blood Moon. It's getting worse. Thoughtseize is getting better because there's way more variation in how people are trying to attack you, and you need to have a plan for those things, or you need to be having a plan to beat a specific weakness of Boros, because they're all out in the open now. Everyone knows how Boros is strong and weak, and everyone knows how Frogtide is strong and weak. So if you know what those are and you know how to get under them, that's what you need to do. You need to play a deck with the purpose of knowing what you're beating. But right now, I think Mardu is probably the best at navigating an open field and beating a variety of combo decks and the other mid-range decks. So for that reason, that's what I choose. How about you, Spencer?
Good question, Abe. So before we started recording and before I was like watching and listening, I just was all in on Mardu. I think that every trend says that Mardu will actually only go up from here. Like I don't, not forever, but like for the foreseeable future, like I do believe that like Mardu is the clear best. I think that it's trending that way. I think that from the decks you're going to play against, I think it from like just like I think playing high card quality is like really, really good right now. And that's usually true in like a combo-esque format, right? If you can be like a little aggressively slanted and have like really good card quality, play like some amount of like pretty good disruption, like that's this format.
Yeah, I mean, in combo heavy formats, you see less of your deck, so having every card be good is just important.
Exactly. So that's where I led before we started the episode. As we've talked, I have a ridiculous statement that people can clip it, tell me I'm stupid. I might try Wizards. Straight up blue-red Wizards and just punish the One Ring, punish the like combo decks, and just tell them like both sides no, and then lose to like random crap. Because I think that like the thing about something like Snapcaster Mage is like, yeah, it's like, kind of expensive in this format, but like I don't know that the format's like that cheap when you think about like the like yes, there's a lot of one drops like creatures, but as far as like spells, the combo decks actually, even Storm, like it's a cheap combo deck for cost wise, but like I know that I want to play against like the type of stuff that Wizards would present to me as far as like multiple disruption every turn.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Frogtide operates in a similar space to what you're describing. I think cards like Snapcaster Mage giving you redundancy, like we're talking about seeing less of your deck. If you draw one counterspell and one bolt, and then you have a Snapcaster Mage, it means you've drawn two of one of them. And
that's the thing, though, right? Is that I think that unless you're going to add Snapcaster to Frogtide, then you're going to continue to have this like card net loss against Boros. And
Well, I think Frog is the way that they try to get around that, right? Like and also Boros is always going to be pretty tough, I think, because all of your best cards cost 2, and you have a bunch of cards to draw a card that cost 1. So you have like ways to mitigate the fact you see less of your deck, but you aren't good at impacting the board on the same timetable as them. And then,
are you yucking my yum right now? I'm trying to like.
No, I'm just saying.
I'm trying to.
I literally said I think Snapcaster Mage has a place in the format that we're describing.
Yeah,
I think I understand the theory behind it. I think you also, if you find that Wizards is not up to snuff,
maybe
which is
just
something I
add
could see
Snapcaster to blue black.
You could.
I think that there is a world that could be true. I know that there were some lists that were playing Oculus over Murktide.
Yeah, the Unearth Oculus decks that.
Are they playing Unearth
Edgar?
Too? I didn't notice the Unearth, but that makes some sense. Like,
yeah, it was like 4 Unearths, 4 Thought Scours.
Oh, that's crazy.
And
okay.
You have to turn on the Oculus. Then it also means that like you can just let your frogs die a little bit more, or like let your Oculus die. I think there's real merit to a deck like that. That's better against
at
like
that list. That could be better than Wizards. I just think Flame of Anor actually seems pretty good right now, as like a card that's been kind of like it like was like at this all time high. Like people are like, oh yeah, this card's really good, and then it was like, oh, we can't play this. It's like 3 mana. But honestly, like, is it that weird to play Flame of Anor right now? Like, I don't even know that it is.
I think it might be a bit early for Flame to shine. Like, I think in a world where the decks start to be more about the threats on the board, preying on the weaknesses in Boros' removal, like people start playing things that are like 4 and 5 toughness regularly. Decks like Domain Zoo start doing a little better.
Well, that's why I said it, right? Is that we saw...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that that's kind of like the...
Maybe I'm 2 steps ahead. Like, I could totally believe that I'm like jumping the shark here. Just like totally.
Yeah, you could be jumping the gun a bit. I mean, I haven't played much of Wizards, and honestly, the reason that I have not I'm choosing when I'm saying what I would play, that I'm choosing Mardu Energy, is that I have not put in any reps with a lot of the combo decks that are that we talked about, like Breach, which is a good cards deck, like you said, that has a combo finish, which is very appealing to me, just in theory, in a format like this. You know, various other things like Titan, the big mana decks. I think over time, the decks that are weak to Blood Moon start to get better when the Blood Moons and Harbingers stop being as effective. So there's a lot of things that have yet to be explored, and a lot of things that are explorable. I just think that when you look at the rules of engagement, you look at the format, that's my choice. But I think that something like what you're describing, it still might have an issue with just the Boros 1-drops. Like, I think just about the red removal helps out a lot.
I mean, I'm thinking honestly, I would not have said this had Temur Grindstone not done well against the deck. That leads me to believe that red removal spells can in fact beat that deck. Like,
yeah, I think red removal spells and Tameo combined gives you a plan that Frogtide does not have.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm just not sure how good that is.
Yeah.
But I think that the rest of what you're saying lines up with why Frogtide is good. And could be worth.
Yeah.
It's worth
we're like, it's so funny. We have these conversations, right? And like we like start at different points and then we do converge. And that's one of the fun things about these type of podcasts is like, yeah, we both agree that like Mardu seems like it's trending towards what you want to do. And I'm just giving an alternative route that's not Dimir because I did not realize they were playing Unearth. That actually sounds kind of hot. So
yeah, those lists are really cool. I mean, what I would say is, and this is kind of my thoughts on not just Modern Magic in general, is like if you leave this podcast and your takeaway is like, oh, format solved, it's just play Boros or Frogtide or Mardu, then like I've kind of failed. Like the reason I want to play Mardu is because of all the things we talked about for the last 10 minutes.
I mean,
20
Mardu
minutes.
is also not a One Ring deck like the other decks, right? Like, which is, I think some of them play like 2, but like, I think that
Yeah. It's not a 4 One Ring deck, and
Yeah.
I mean, not even the
I think Boros decks play 2 to
the
4.
Boros.
It just depends.
Yeah, it depends. Like right now, I see lists are like 2 or 3 when I'm looking, but yeah, you have a lot of flexibility.
All right.
And like understanding why it is you're choosing that deck and why it is that something like right going from Mardu Energy best deck winning the most right now to Wizards makes sense. Like you got it. If you get that as a listener, we've done our jobs, and I'm really happy. So
I know I feel like I sound crazy, but I'm glad that you like connected the dots in my brain. Like,
oh yeah.
All right. One more thing before we move on to always improving. You get to just decide. I mean, I know how you feel, but I want you to take your feelings out of it for a second. Can you do that? You know what I'm going to
Okay, I will take my feelings out of it.
Okay. Will you ban the One Ring in the next BNR? No feelings involved.
No feelings involved?
No feelings.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I'm there. Like, I was there literally a week ago. But there was an interesting conversation that I had with somebody that the One Ring actually increased format diversity. And it does suck that you need to own 4 One Rings. Like, that sucks a lot. It hurts specific cards and archetypes, but it doesn't actually hurt. Actually, does it even hurt archetypes? I don't know.
I had a question. Okay, so I had a question that I saw in a Discord of mine that I really liked. Was like, how many people are not playing the One Ring in decks where the One Ring would be better than 4 other cards in their deck because they are specifically playing that archetype or playing that deck because they do not want to spend $100 on copies of the One Ring in order to play.
This is the Jace question. We're boomers here.
I think that when we're talking about a world where every single deck, combo and fair, is playing the One Ring in some copy across all lines, and we're seeing the format converge on combo being the answer to things that can beat snowballing 1-drops and the One Ring's card advantage. And those decks are powering themselves with the One Ring. We have to admit we have a problem. My feelings aside, we like gameplay quality aside, we have to.
They're fun games, though, right? Like they actually kind of are fun.
You can think they are fun. I do not enjoy games in which my first 4 turns of gameplay do not matter. And I do not enjoy games where my first 16 turns of gameplay, or, whatever, like my first 7
I mean, obviously, if the One Ring goes
because someone just draws the One Ring,
here's the thing.
And it is unanswered, and the game is over.
Here's the argument that made me think about this. And I'm going to end it after this point. So, I think you got your point. Because I brought up Jace, right? And, like, let's pretend that Jace the Mind Sculptor was the best card in Modern. He's not different. He doesn't offer less card advantage. He doesn't discount less of the board. He doesn't, like... I think
contextually, I agree with this assessment. I think a real difference is that Jace the Mind Sculptor was mostly a problem.
I'm gonna say, if we ban the One Ring, I'm not gonna lie, we might just be underselling Jace the Mind Sculptor for the last 4 years. Or how many years has it been? Has it been 7 years since it got unbanned? I thought about everything that Jace does, and it's everything the One Ring does.
I think that by being a blue card,
sure, by
not protecting not protecting you from literally everything on the turn it comes down, Jace is substantially worse. I think in the context where Jace was printed, it was similarly oppressive, but was also a blue card, and they did eventually ban it.
Blue Manji. That deck was.
They did eventually ban it. Jace was in everything. People were playing Jace Balerans to kill Jace the Mind Sculptors. It was awesome. You get Spreading Seas twice, and you'd be Vindicate. We did it. We did it, chat. We beat the Jace the Mind Sculptor by playing our double blue card in our Jund deck. We finally figured out a way to do it.
Dude, they didn't even need the blue. They just would freaking cascade into it sometime.
Yeah, that's true. Blood right into Vindicate. Boom. Or God bless. Blood braid into a little draw through.
I'm just saying.
It really does it all.
I'm just saying, if and when, because I do believe it will happen, the One Ring gets banned, we got to take another look at Jason the Mind Sculptor. Like, I think we might be wrong on this card.
I will let you do that. I will look into things like
one drops, not 4 mana.
I'll look into ways to kill people before they cast or on the turn they cast a Jason the Mind Sculptor. Jason the Mind Sculptor with a protection trigger, we can talk. But Jason the Mind Sculptor as is, you're gonna have to sell me a little bit. You have to show your work.
That's gonna do it. Abe, always improving is the point of this podcast. It's the way that we really believe this, and I think that like if somebody like listened to our podcast meetings with me, you, and Mason. And we're just like, it's so funny because I think that people would think that we're like super negative listening to our podcast meetings. But we're really just trying to improve. We're like, hey, I think this thing could be better. I think this thing could be better. And it really is about this, like, we can be better than we are right now. How do we do that? And I think the thing that's really cool about you, me and Mason is that we approach everything like this. I approach my marriage like this. I approach being a dad like this. I approach my job like this. I approach magic like this. It's actually like a sickness in some ways because I can't not approach something like this. So, with that being said, how did the sickness affect you this week?
Yeah, well, if we're gonna call it a sickness, the sickness affected me this week as I spent a lot of time. For those not in the know about my personal life, because, you're just listening to the podcast and you may have just meeting me for the first time. I'm moving for like the first time in my life as an adult, like having to move my stuff. I've been thankful that I was going to move like right before the pandemic. Thankful that I did not wind up doing it. But I have therefore been like going through a lot of and learning a lot of things about and judging a lot of things about how I'm going to plan this move. Especially in the last few days, I've had off from, I like took off from work, was like touring places, and I believe as of today we're kind of set on a place, but putting in place just the structures, making a plan for how I'm doing that, kind of sitting down with my partner who I'm moving in with, as well as our future roommate who we're working with. Like that has been a pretty big challenge of like, okay, like a lot of things, right? Like budgeting, actually figuring out how to use the space. Like I've been like laying things out on graph paper and like planning out, okay, this is how big my desk is, and like
that's
this kind of like
that's so fun.
It's like actually planning it all out is a lot, and it's like a lot of problems I have not engaged with before, and I've really just been enjoying the process of like
I love solving problems,
figuring that out.
I'm like that too. Can I give you some like personal advice from somebody that signed a 5-year lease and had to move 6 months after it started?
Is it don't sign a 5-year lease?
Oh no, you should always sign a 5-year lease. They paid me so much money to cancel that lease.
Land on me. Sign a 5-year lease? Is that the advice?
Yeah, just to be clear, they do not have an out clause. You should sign the 5-year lease. They gave me a lot of money. No, you're an adult. I assume you have a savings account, Abe? Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, you should hire movers. I know that it looks really expensive, but not hiring movers sets you back weeks and weeks and weeks of your happiness and your like body. I've done it. I've never hired movers. I've moved in my marriage 1, 2, 3, 4 times. I've always regretted it. It is, if it is in the works for the 3 of you, you should do it. They will do it faster than you, better than you, more efficient than you, put things where you want it. Like there is my garage looks ridiculous. I moved 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once something goes in the I'll deal with it later hole, yes, it might never come out.
Might never leave. And at some point during the move, if you're doing it yourself, that pile starts to add up.
Yeah, I mean, currently it looks like we have like a 10 days between where it looks like we'll be picking up keys and when my partner's lease at her current place runs out. So
Okay.
we have time to like do a slow move of her things. When it comes to like the
Yes,
big
that's
items,
you only need one day of movers. Just have the
yeah, you
movers.
need one truck day.
Yes,
So that's all the world asks.
exactly. You get it. For me, my always improving moment was checking my work. We had an interesting moment. Probably the best moment on the podcast last week was between Mason and I when I said I believe that the rule Leyline deck is the most powerful deck in Standard, but I don't believe that it is the best deck. So this week I challenged myself to play 3 leagues with that deck, and I 100% believe that I was right. I don't think that in fact, I would say this: you should not play Leyline if you're going to enter a big event. I think that the deck makes you put cards in your deck that naturally increase variance in a way that you don't want. If you're fine with variance and you're like, I just want to be all in on this event and have the best record possible and like try to roll sixes, go for it. But I checked the work. You have to mulligan a lot. Like a lot. And then in addition to the fact that you have to mulligan a lot, you will just draw ley lines sometimes. Additionally to that, half of your deck is pump spells, half of your deck is creatures. And it's not even it's not a 20-20-20 deck like Slickshot is. It's actually worse than that. Because you have ley lines in your deck. So like some of these have to adjust. And Mason really challenged me on this, and I was like, okay, well, like, I'll check it. Like, I think that it is obviously when was the last time we had a standard deck that wouldn't have turned 2 Abe? Like, I don't even know.
Tybalt's trickery, and it didn't win on 2, but it was
okay. No, I think that's a good answer. This deck, it's so funny because I talked about how I played it in the challenge. I thought that we got super unlucky. I still believe all of that's true. But I think that this deck lends itself to getting unlucky. Like it is a high variance deck, and the variance is not on your side. And what I said last week, I checked my work. I believe I'm right. I would just put slick shots and innkeeper's talents and all of that stuff back in your deck before playing this.
I think the bans, like the arena bans, took effect or that were announced.
They're going to take effect tomorrow as time of recording, I believe.
Yeah. But those bans, I think, support with what you're saying, too, right? Like, they banned it in just Best of One, and they're doing an Alchemy rework.
Yeah.
On Arena. And I think that, Best of One has a hand smoother. I don't know if people ever remember that, but, like, it does.
I said that in our Discord today. I was making some memes about it.
Yeah, like you will draw. It will literally draw for you what is like 2 hands, and then like give you the one that's more in line with your like land spell distribution.
Correct.
And so I think
to get 2 lands, for example, in your 20 to 21 land deck, then you already get 1. But in best of 3, that's not true. Like you're gonna have to mulligan all those 1 land hands.
Yeah. So like it filters out some number of your like all of your it filters out 1 landers and like your 4 or 5 landers. It keeps you in the range of most of your 2 to 3 landers.
Right.
So when you look at that sample, I imagine Leyline shows up way more than it should in Best of 3, which is probably why it hasn't been banned in Best of 3.
Dude,
because what you're saying,
man, I went 14-1 when I picked up the deck. Like I was like, this deck is broken. Like this might be one of the best decks I've ever played. And then I played, 100 more matches. I was like,
Yeah, were those first 15 just ones where things were on your side?
Yeah.
If it does that for 15 rounds in a row, you'll win the Grand Prix.
What's funny is I only had 1 turn 2 kill in those games. So I was like, well, this deck must be broken. Like, if I only have 1 turn 2 kill... what's funny is it was on a mold of 5. Like, I got a turn 2 kill on a mold of 5. I was like, okay, well, like, this deck is clearly busted. I think that you are more likely to mold to 4 or 5 than you are to keep a 7. And I think that's a legit.
Yeah, I think that's pretty big liability, especially in a deck where you're relying on Leyline.
So, But I think checking your work is important, right? Like Mason had a pretty strong belief that this was the best thing to do in standard. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to listen to my friend. I'm going to check my work. And I think that like putting in the work to do that it's important. It's kind of hard, right? Like you want to rest on your laurels. You want to believe what you're going to believe.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're not right, like the worst thing that could have happened to you would be
Is
what
that
finding
Mason's
out
right
that
and I
you're
just win a bunch?
right. Like, yeah, the worst thing is Mason's right. You win a bunch. Honestly, there's no bad outcome.
Yeah, there's
But
no bad
the
outcome.
worst outcome is that you don't do any of the work, and then you don't actually know the answer. So by putting in the time to get an answer you're comfortable with, like
I think I'm
you're
2-2
doing
in the league right my current league right now, so I can still even the money. Like it hasn't been bad. It's just confirmed what I believe.
yeah,
Like
when you go back and look at the games
yeah,
and how they play and
yeah,
like the issues with the deck structurally, they're all showing and it shows
exactly.
the exact liabilities playing it, which is what you'd hope to learn by playing. That's why like 3-2-2-3-0-5, like whatever it is, you're gonna it's about what you learn and experience. So much more so.
If you're a patron of the show, patron of $5 or more, you're going to ask a question in the Discord via Google Doc. Big Dak asks, "What do you think of Chappelle Roan?" If you're a music lover, I'll let you go first.
Chaperone, I think that she is the most fun pop artist of the last. I was the most fun pop artist to me since like Carly Rae Jepsen, who I think is only not America's sweetheart because she's Canadian.
Can we clip that? Only not America's sweetheart because she's
Like seriously, like listen, Taylor Swift really lost the plot a while ago.
I gotta ask. Do you really like? Do you see what happened with Justin Bieber? Is it really because she's Canadian?
That she's not America's sweetheart.
I think
It's because Taylor
Justin
Swift.
Bieber
I
was
think the timing
everyone's
didn't
sweetheart
line
for a
up.
long time. So.
But like Justin Bieber was America's heartthrob, but heartthrobs like okay, heartthrobs like Canadian boyfriend, classic.
Here's the thing: I'm not a lesbian, so like, I don't have.
Yeah, but like, have you heard those synths, man? Like Chapel Roan, just
dude, I watched her. Okay, finish what your thought, and then I have a thought.
oh yeah. I mean, I think she's a really fun artist. I'm sad for her that she has blown up as much as she has, as fast as she has. I think she's reaching a wider audience than she is really ready for as a young person who's just kind of making music.
Even meant to.
Yeah, I think it's beyond what she ever imagined it was supposed to be. But like, I mean, her music is just really, really fun and good, and especially speaks to like a more progressive, open-minded, young like version of the world that young people really want to believe in, and so it really took traction. But she didn't deserve all that.
Have you seen Pink Pony Club at the park? From like, I think it's like before the pandemic.
No.
She's like on a keyboard singing Pink Pony Club at like a park to like 50 people.
Yeah, that tracks. I mean, like she really, really, really like has exploded beyond.
Yeah,
like
so it was really funny when we got this question because we got the question and people were like, I really want to hear what Spencer has to say in our Discord. And I tweeted, I was like, I don't know what this. Why do you guys care what I specifically? There's like, why do you got like multiple people in our Discord?
I'm clearly. Thank you for making me music guy on this episode. I'm clearly not branding myself well enough. People just don't want to know what
I don't. Here's the thing: is like, I don't think that's why they want to know. I think it's because I'm nuanced politics, and that's why they want to know. And I'm going to say something that might lose me some fans, but I think that it's true. I don't equate politics to listen to artists. I, in a lot of ways, unless they're like that's their shtick, don't care. You know, something I am a believer in separating artist from art, and I think part of that is from becoming a content creator. Like, I probably don't agree with a lot of people about a lot of things. And I think that this artist not endorsing a candidate for this presidency, which is I think what people really wanted to hear from me, they're not ready to. Like, they don't know. They're living their life. Like, they're writing music. They don't. That's not the thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that we have reached this place where, like, if people don't align exactly with us, they're bad. And I don't align with that. I don't believe that. I didn't mean to go this deep down this. I just want to say, like, I don't want you to care what I think about this person or about their political beliefs. I think that she's got some hit songs that are really fun, and if anybody knows me, I think the memes of her songs are way funnier. Like, we literally listen to "Hot Dogs Are the Freaking Best" like 32 times in my house before the podcast. Like, that's how catchy her songs are. Is
My partner and I will look at each other and go, and he was wearing those fugly jeans. Just so like,
there's some. It reminds me of it. Honestly, it reminds me of when in 2020 or 2021 when Olivia Rodrigo blew up, and people are like, "Why is she so big?" I was like, because every millennial has been waiting for an album to make them feel 17 again for like 15 years. And she did it. She perfectly encapsulated what it was like to be 17 years old. And when an artist can do that, who cares what they believe? Like, you have been transported into another world.
Yeah, or if you do care what they believe, let that guide you.
Yeah,
do
exactly.
it for you. Like, if you don't care, love their music. If you do care, don't.
Yeah.
Like, it's...
And it's the same with this podcast, right? Like, I don't know. I love talking to you and Mason, and we're going to talk about things that we love, and like, we joke about movies. Like, we make jokes every podcast, but I thought it was interesting that people cared what I specifically thought about this artist. And my thought is that I think the memes are really funny. I think her songs are really catchy. And that I, too, am politically nuanced. But it doesn't make me like her more or less. If you want to join the conversation, you join the public Discord. That we talk about fantasy football, we talk about anime, we talk about magic. I plan on actually being more active in there. So, like, if you're like, oh, I want to be a free member of the Patreon to get access to, like, host people, which is something that we're going to talk about in the future. But I just want to, like, access other people in the community that care about, like, other nerd stuff. That's a great place to do it. If you want to join the Patreon Discord, the invite is in your welcome message. You sign up, you get a welcome message that I have written that should give you a link to the Patreon Discord. You just click that link and you get access to that Discord, which we have cleaned up. If you are not familiar and you're like, oh man, there was so much in that Discord, I deleted, I think, 8+ channels, Abe, this week. I don't know if you saw. I know that there was something
I did see. It was nice.
Yeah. So check it out. It's pretty great. You get access to that at $5 or more. And then I just want to give a shout out to the YouTube comments. Once again, y'all are too nice to me specifically, but I want everyone who leaves a comment to shout out Abe today, because this episode would not have happened without Abe. I was really sad today, and Abe tried to hype me up in our chat. And look at this smile. He was like, Spencer, we got this. We're not missing an episode. And shout out to Mason. Like, Mason not feeling his best today, and I only joined because of you, Abe. And every YouTube comment is like, go Abe, A+1, whatever it is. That we would
put on the red beanie for all of you today. I put up
the red beanie. We are on all the social media platforms. We are on TikTok at CCMPod. We are on X, Twitter. I hate calling it X. We're on Twitter at CCMTG.
Everyone knows.
And we are on Blue Sky at CCMTG. And then we're on Threads on our CCMTG account. So like, comment, subscribe, review. There's literally, I say this every week, but when I gave the challenge at the beginning of the episode to like, and y'all like, it was our most listened to episode ever. Like, not just like easily the most listened to. You can only see it on YouTube because,
that's
the
not over the
YouTube
public,
numbers.
but
But like, I promised that it cascaded. Like, it was shared more, it was liked more. It really does help the show, and we saw the benefits in every way. If you want to find Mason, you can find him at Mason E. Clark on Twitter. You can also email him at his email. I think it's actually in his Twitter bio, where you can email him for coaching. There's a couple slots. He just tweeted about it. Abe, where can people find you?
You can find me over at twitter.com/morenothings, and you can find me now at Blue Sky at More Nothings as well. Kind of in the vein of our Patreon question. I found that through having I really like the vibes over Blue Sky a lot, and I imagine that I might be posting more of just what I'm doing. Part of the way by having 1,400 fewer followers on there right now because people don't really use it in the same way, but also because just not having to deal with all these algorithm boosted tweets and whatever, and just the organization of the site really makes it feel like a cozier place to post. So maybe I will be doing some more, I think more of my thoughts and things I'm doing day to day. If you really care about old school social media, you'll see over at Blue Sky, but I'll also be, posting all my Magic stuff and everything on Twitter in there as well. So
love that. I think I said this to you guys last week that Threads is my favorite social media right now. I really it's funny, people really hate the engagement bait posts, but I actually find the discussions on those engagement based posts like old Twitter and Facebook to be really fun. So I'm on Threads. I think they're Spencer 13H everywhere but Twitter. I am on at Heezy Game on Twitter. Probably my least used social media at this point. And then Blue Sky at Spencer 13H also. That's going to do it for this week. Abe, thank you for making me do this. I really was going to cancel on you, and you just were you just hyped me up so hard. So give a plus.
I was excited to do it. I don't know if you could tell. Love this episode. I honestly do think Modern's, for what it is, we're doing our best with it.
It's an interesting place. So thank you everybody so much. We'll see y'all next week for another episode of Constructed Criticism.